Farm4Profit Podcast. Take a listen, have a blast. Farm4Profit Podcast. Learn about farming while having a laugh. Farm4Profit Podcast.
And listeners, welcome back to the Farm4Profit Podcast. You got Tanner sitting here.
Oh, you're letting me introduce myself today.
Yeah, you got mad at me last time.
Corey's here.
Hey, Corey. It's good to have you. In studio. What a rainy day. Isn't this kind of nice? I get to have you in studio and you don't feel like you have to be somewhere else.
Yeah, if you hear a few raindrops, it's normal. If you hear some thunder, that's normal.
It's been normal for this week. It just rains every day. Every night and every day.
This is our fourth, I think, wave of rain. And it's not very big. It just keeps developing right over us.
Yeah.
So
some people would probably give a lot to have the rain that we've had this
year. You can have it.
We'll send it your way. Listeners, we thank you for listening to us. We do greatly appreciate you and all that you've helped make Farm4Profit. Don't forget to leave us a review everywhere that we listen or you watch. We appreciate that. Engage with us on YouTube and social media. We like your feedback, especially if you've got questions or guest ideas to send to us. That certainly helps us grow. We appreciate the feedback that you've given because that's why we've got a repeat guest today.
Heck yeah.
We get to have them in our new studio. Last time we recorded in Dave's office with them. But we've got the folks here from AgrisAcademy. Drove all the way down today in the bright sunshine until they got in the parking lot for the studio.
Yeah, brought the rain with them.
Brought the rain.
One of the waves.
Or we brought it to them, one way or the other.
Only way to do it.
Yeah.
We
Talk
got
in person.
Jeff and Mike back. So welcome.
Hey, thanks for having us back.
Why don't you reintroduce yourself? We've picked up new listeners since the last time that you were on. It was almost a year ago exactly. If I remember correctly, it was in August.
Yeah, I think it was.
When
Yeah.
you were on last time.
Yeah.
So why don't we start, Jeff, first with you, and then we'll continue on to Mike, and then what AgrisAcademy is.
Yeah, Jeff Kazin. I'm a 30-year industry veteran on the trading side and farm. I'm a first-gen farmer, so do both. And went through that, decided that I wanted to actually farm more. You can only sit there and work the second job for so long, and then. We got into Mike and I have been looking for something, so we co-founded AgrisAcademy.
Yeah, I'm 30 years like Jeff, plus minus. I'm I think about a year and a half older than Jeff, but 20 of which we were basically doing the same thing at Cargill on the trade side, primarily, along with a couple of other segues along the way. I left a little earlier than he did and spent about the last dozen years or so either in some ag tech oriented startups or on the investment side in venture capital before he and I kicked this bad boy off. So.
Yeah.
So recovering traders?
Yeah, that's exactly how to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, in a way.
I mean, I think you still trade a little bit, don't you?
I would say I'm a recovering venture capitalist. Getting back, I think I made I'll credit you guys with putting me in that position last time, where I think I said that I just thought came to my head that I'm more comfortable, talking to guys in Carhartts versus guys in the Patagonia vests. So I think you got some crap for either a North Face or
I think I had a vest on, that's right.
Yeah.
I do,
does seem
I do like
you.
my vests.
But you got your pocket Farm4Profit shirt on today.
I do, look at that.
If you need a nice work shirt, you can go to farmfocus.com, get yourself a nice Farm4Profit work shirt.
That's right.
I love my pocket shirts.
Absolutely. It is great to have you guys back. Next week on our show is going to be a couple of recovering accountants that entered the ag world. So not to be afraid of that show either. It's not going to be boring, just like this one I know is going to provide quite a bit of value. We're starting to pick it up.
Absolutely raining hard again.
It's actually picking it up on the mics.
Wow.
This is really good. So let's dive into what's happened with AgrisAcademy over the last 12 months.
Yeah, I guess I'll kick it off. So we were here last summer, and we a little bit of history how we got going. We took a half dozen clients. We had some things happen, and people were like, don't not take all this information you learned over the last and not share it. That was some people were, help us out. And I always had people, you work for Cargill, tell us what's going to happen. And I'd be like, I'm never going to get down that road. I want us to be friends.
Yeah.
And so we started the business. And we took a half dozen clients around. They're scattered around the country, and it's what we call a retain program. And we would go. We're traveling to the farms. We're teaching at the kitchen table. We're in the shop office. It's a lot of mom, dad, and the next generation, son, daughter, it's mother, daughter, it's cousins, kind of these groups out there. And that was a real personable way to teach. And every time we left, we'd sit there and we'd write down notes. And we're like, that's important. Oh, that's important, right? And Mike's like, yeah, we gotta find a way to get the cost down. And we got to get the time commitment down, right? How do we get to more farmers, and how do we get the cost down? So when we were talking to you last summer, we were building a class, a master class.
Yeah, 40 total hours of instruction. That's
Yeah.
a lot of writing, a lot of rinse repeating, a lot of kicking things out, a lot of putting it back in, a lot of keeping a placeholder just in case. So yeah.
And we didn't know what we were getting into, but we were like, okay, how are we going to, all those little things. So we rented a real classroom space, right? Modern, cameras that follow you around, and mics from St. Cloud State. So a university class space. It's an all virtual class. We're out there beating the bushes. We get your listeners, other listeners, and they join this class. We don't know exactly how it's going to turn out. We're not, and it just turned out to be a ton of fun. Any given night we'd have 35 to 50 on the class. You can talk to each other through technology. You can ask questions, and people got to know each other. And the farms were from all over the place. Far west is Oregon, as far east as Virginia, Missouri on the south, and then in the north. So people could hear other farmers, right, talking about very specific things. And yeah, we put the class together, and then we have a 2 hour. It's a 2 hours twice a week, and then we'd always have an hour kind of after session.
Yep.
Which we thought was going to be informal. We literally thought, let's sneak in some beer, all that kind of stuff. But quite frankly, it was either a build more on the curriculum that day that basically ran for another 45 minutes to an hour, or something topical on the farm management side that just kind of got traction, or something that might have happened weird in that market that we didn't quite cover that day that was worth discussing. So it was a diligent group. I was very impressed.
So is the class more focused on the marketing side of it, or is it on whole farm management?
Yeah, we try to stick in our wheelhouse, right? It's a merchandising on the cash grain or cash sales and a futures best practice, because that's how when you really break it down, we get into it, and it's at a detailed level that's just not taught anywhere else. The challenge, or not challenge, the opportunity is when you get really good at merchandising, it funnels over, and we call them intersections, right? You need to have an intersection between your cropping plan, a year out, right, or whatever that is, and your merchandising plan. You'll have an intersection in crop insurance. You'll have an intersection in how you invest, right? And we sit there and work, because when you get really good at this piece, you can squeeze a lot more out of the asset base that you have. And today's farms, and one of the big changes that happens, today's farms, they own their own trucks, they own their own bins, they can run that, they own an elevator.
Yeah,
snuck up on them,
it has all
right?
the same
Right.
resources that an elevator has.
And so they come up, and so now we can teach them the same, we put them through the same, but maybe even with a farm sense behind it. That if I had a young person coming out of college that came to work for us, the same thing we can teach them, we know we can teach farm, and we proved that out this last winter, in the class side, right? That you could sit there and work on a very steady cadence, teach it just like a college class, and then we had office hours, so you could apply it, right? You could put your time in. We always say we have both our links, our calendar links, and we were like, well, pick which one you like. We'd have a little competition going. Who do you like the most, right? Which
It's easier to like him because of the farming background, and although I bumped up against it on again, off again in my life, but yeah, we got everybody covered, and yeah, it's important to have that access, because it serves two functions. One, obviously, if you're struggling with understanding something, we want to make sure we nip that in the bud right away. But I would say with our A students, they were very present in the class, very present in engaging us, to the point where not only were they getting the curriculum, we were already going down the road together about giving them the tools to be a better risk manager for the farm. We knew their market outlets, we knew their bin capacity, we knew what their positions were, that kind of thing. So yeah, it was really serving two purposes.
Yeah, and we're not advising, right? Here's the math you should run. Have you thought about this?
You're consulting, kind of.
Effectively.
Educating,
You
You're-
could call
you're a
anything
professor.
consulting.
We're
Yeah.
we're
Yeah,
loading their toolbox up with what to do, in various scenarios and market structures.
Yeah, and it just but it's more in the education, because when they leave the class, you can do it again next year, and the next year after that, it's repeatable. It's not like you got a hot market tip, right? We hear it all the time. I was with this person, and then it was great for 2 years, and then we hear that all the time. But when you get the merchandising, that core skill, you can execute it year after year, and you can give it to the next generation, right? We see a lot of that kind of multi-generational in our customers, where it's the best is when you see the family, because you can see like into their lives, right? They have dinner every Tuesday and Thursday night, and then they all sit in front of the TV and watch the thing together. And it's a gift, right? I think
We've even had some people literally gift it to the next gen as part of tuition.
it's like a Christmas present.
Yeah, but the one that keeps on giving.
Well, they talked about their A students. They gifted it to me, and I was an F student, just like my college days. I don't think I attended a class.
Did you not go to class?
I went to. Well, I went to
No,
some college classes.
what's it like? You dropped the class? Kind
I
of thing?
dropped.
Yeah.
My deal, and this is just a me deal.
We don't
thing.
judge.
This is just
we said that last
personal
time. We don't
deal,
judge.
because I had the same issue when I was on Farm Bureau board. The evening stuff for me, I do a lot. Obviously, farming is a lot in itself.
Absolutely.
You can get really into the weeds in it, and then I sell seed, and I do this, and I do that, and Tanner takes a lot of my time.
It gets to
and
be
when
too
I
much.
get to be in the evenings, I got my girls doing dance and all that kind of stuff. Like,
Yep, tell me
and
about
once
it.
I wanted to be there for the live, and once I missed one, I'm like, it almost snowballs, and it's terrible. It's the same excuse of not working out or anything like that. Like, just
Totally
get back on the
understand.
horse.
But for the busy types, we do have it recorded.
Yes.
For the listeners out there, that you can have access to it, because we all. You mentioned farming's full time. Some people have jobs in town. The kid stuff. I mean, gosh, my last 2 months have been nothing but kid stuff.
Yep.
So I totally get that. But to whoever whichever way your learning style works for you.
Yeah.
We got a little worried. It's kind of like college. Like, there were people in the class that we never saw, because you can see who's showing up, and because of social media, you want everybody to have that great experience, and
Sure.
And so we're like emailing them outside of class, "Are you okay? Right? Or is there anything we can do?" And they're like, "No, we're just busy." And then
They binge watch over Christmas.
exactly
And get caught up.
all of a
and
sudden
then,
they get caught up. We're like,
Yeah.
I'm like, "Is that?" No,
I
no,
saved
it's
every email. I have it like in chronological order. Like, at some point, I need to just go back. I just need to go watch.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you just need to make it up in your brain that it's at 9 o'clock every Saturday morning.
Right.
That's
But
when your live class
I
is.
also want it to be with my dad and my brother, who I'm doing it with, right? Because, like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be the point man. Like, I want us all to retain the information. I don't want to have to reteach it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
If you're looking to boost your harvest efficiency this season, look no further than Brandt. All of their grain cart options are designed with you in mind, from unmatched durability to innovative features that make unloading easier and faster. Not to mention their unique large footprint track configuration that reduces field compaction and increases flotation throughout your field. They're the hardest working, most efficient units in the industry. Brandt grain carts are here to be built to keep you running smoothly. Visit Brandt.ca today to learn more information and see why farmers across North America trust Brandt. That's Brandt.ca for more information. Strong, reliable, built to last.
yeah, you bring up an important point. When people do sign up, anybody in their operation gets in on the sign up. So
it's the sign-ups for the farm.
Yep.
yeah.
It's super important. It's so
We want it to be that way too.
in our retained side, especially when you get in these bigger farms. So our rule of thumb is that, as we see it, roughly 1,500 to 2,000 acres in Corn Belt per owner operator. So if you're farming 4,000 acres, there's 2 of you. If it's 6,000, there's 4 of you. Because you got to have some people that are manager types in the business. But what we find is there's specialization, right? One's going to be maybe more business, one's going to be ops, tends to be maybe one's more in the chem spray side of the business. You get the specialization.
One's more on vacations.
Yeah.
Just wants to drive
but
the
what
truck.
happens when you get them all at the table, like especially if we're going out on the retained business to the farm, and you get everybody on the table, is you don't all have to be an expert on the farm, but you have to understand, because when you really get power out of really top-end merchandising skills, and you merge that with the operations side of the business and the other pieces of the business, that's when you can squeeze lots of money out of the same asset, basically. So there's little things we learned along the way. That was one of them. When you can get the entire farm, especially when you've got multi people involved, which a lot of farms do these days, get everybody pulling the plow. Is it pulling the plow the same way, or pushing the refrigerator uphill? I don't know. It becomes an even more powerful tool. You can really you get things going. Like, okay, we got to harvest, and we're going to harvest this week instead of 2 weeks from now, and everybody understands why.
Yeah.
Right, and that gets everybody motivated. You know how
we forced a lot of people to get going early last year with the pre-harvest inverse on the basis, and that was from all the way from central South Dakota all the way to central Ohio, because there were some significant economic justification to go early, even if you had to dry it a little bit more, even if you had to switch your plans around or whatever. There was real money on the table.
Yeah, I had a buddy down in Illinois that I think, what is that down in Decatur? Is that ADM?
Yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah, and
they had I can't remember. No drying cost 26%. No dry, no shrink.
Yep.
Below 26%.
Wet mills.
I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah. Well, and
like, why wouldn't you just go get everything you possibly can?
Yeah. Ohio had a enormous inverse for 2 or 3 weeks on corn. Going into harvest, and there was an exercise in what we just described, an exercise in kind of what you hinted at is just ask. If I'm a producer and I'm looking at changing my plans and I'm looking at wet corn, okay, this is what it takes to get there. And I think some of our customers we found there's trepidation to just ask. And or in some cases, we had such a beautiful and significant inverse of like almost $1 over the December, if I remember correctly, Jeff. They almost felt guilty, and I'm like, well, at the end of the day, because we've been on the other side of that, even though you're selling a ridiculous premium for a week or two, you're solving their problem. With every purchase, their blood pressure is going down, 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 because that ethanol plant behind them needs corn. And come hell or high water, we're going to get it. So it's a win-win when you do those things and find those creative ways, whether it be drying, whether it be in the price itself, whether it be in something else that gets you to do that.
Well, I felt like having you guys back for a second time was key for this year, because this week alone we've taken 60 cents, 70 cents off of beans. God. I mean, it's just been a slow and steady downturn as far as prices go. Now, obviously, we're sitting here at the end of July putting this episode together. We don't know where it's going to go, but maybe you guys have a better feeling as to what you think these markets look like.
Well, first off, being humble, right? If you're looking to people you talk to, find the person that's the most humble. The person that says, I can't outdo the market, or I can't the futures market side. That's the person, because we used to say, if you're not humble and you're a spec trader, right? Or the market will put you out. It will humble you. It's just a matter of time. So if you want a characteristic and if you have to go with an advisor, find one that's humble. Look, we can't tell you where the futures are. I could pull up a screen. We could add it is still a 50-50 bet. I think these futures in corn right now is like 406. And if you go out and look at what it takes to ensure through the options market a downside move versus an upside move, it's almost the exact same. We do this exercise all the time.
Go 10, 20, 30, 40 cents at a time off that curve, and the value of both of them are almost to the quarter cent the same.
Right.
At any one time.
So the market feels like it's, I'm not going to, I have the same risk ensuring a downside move as an upside move. And the market is way smarter than me. And I can tell you all kinds of stories about how smart and what kind of resources get applied. There's big money to figure it out, right? So we can't really tell you on the futures. What we tell people is this has been a very hot question, right? What do you do when today's market, because this is the commodity piece of the business, is below production costs? And the human tendency, because knowing tendency is important on that best practice, is to do nothing.
Yep.
Head in sand, right?
Lose sleep, sweat it out.
Right. And for our situation, we're like, no, you can't do nothing, right? You got to be active. And then what does active mean? That means, you got to keep on the discipline side, which is know your position, right? These are some of the basics. Understand the market piece, then know your position. We have yet to be on a farm, and we've been on some great farms, well-managed farms, that knows their position. We finally had to, as a farmer myself, I keep a position sheet, and we've asked for the last year been upgrading. Now we put everybody on it because everybody has their sheet. Nobody has one that's complete.
Yeah, before we sit down
Right.
with any one of our folks in any one of our meetings, you got to have your position filled out.
Right. That used to be in our world.
That's
if you-
terminatable offense.
Yeah, you get fired for that. And they don't care whether the computer went down that day, right? If the trading manager plopped out of his office, and we had one that used to carry a stick. This is maybe before nicer things. And he used to whap that on your disc, and well, what's your position? He'd be barking at you. He'd scare the Jesus out of you. And it wasn't really that he knew. He just wanted to see if you knew. Right?
It was not just your answer; it was the conviction of your answer.
Yeah, and what your position, right? He doesn't probably in the
So you just
day-to-day.
answered with a lie and said it confidently. You just
Exactly.
said, $5.
Say it confidently enough.
So no, you got to know where you're at. You got to be out in these fields. You got to put, the real, what you really think you're going to produce right out there. Know that's your length, right? You got to know all the different pieces of the stuff you've sold. You better know if you've got options on, which to me they're not. People talk out. I'm like, yeah, they're a great tool in the box, but you don't have to have them to be a good marketer. But a lot of our clients, when we get there, they don't really understand what it's really doing to their risk in this position. We get through all these gory details to make sure that they understand where they are. You can't manage your risk. Mike says this all the time, that you don't see. And just clarity makes for better decisions. So again, we're back on what's the best practice. And then we say, okay, every farm has its own risk profile. Because that's why we're not big fans of blanket marketing advice, right? Because every farm is different. We talk to a farmer who owns 3,000 Iowa acres free and clear. That's different than a young man who's just starting out, right? It's got operating lines and tight margins and renting a lot of ground. And so your risk profiles are different. And when you look at managing grain as a risk manager now, which is how the big dogs do it, the ones that lasted.
And that's why they're still around.
The ones that lasted, they are hedgers. And then some very few people are actually speculating in the futures anymore in these big companies. Very few. They're hedging at these facilities, and if you find one that doesn't, you should be concerned, because eventually that'll get you. And be disciplined. Okay, if I'm uncomfortable with the risk of my farm, even at today's 406 corn when we're making this, then you need to do something. Okay, it doesn't. The sphere of decision making is, I'm going to sell every bushel I think I'm going to produce today. And I'm gonna sell something, but the answer cannot be I'm gonna do nothing, right? On this continuum of risk management, and you can sell a small amount off, right? And then the beauty of being in the U.S. is 2 hours later or 2 weeks, you could sell a little more. It's not like you only get one shot. Mike and I have traded some stuff where if you don't sell it on this round, you'll never sell it, kind of thing. And get yourself into that comfortable profile and risk. Now you're a risk manager from the farm. And that provides clarity, right? We want to talk about how people become really good futures, managers. It's because they can keep their mind clear. And we do all kinds of things or teach practices like know your position. Have that
by
discipline.
itself can reduce your stress.
Right.
If you're sitting there waking up at 4 a.m, sweating it out, maybe it's not as bad as you thought. We even had a couple of those examples. Now, granted, it was mid-season last year, different circumstances. People kind of saw the markets cracking a little bit and was worried. But then once we put these positions together for them, they're like, well, actually, that's not as bad as I thought. And I at least now have it in front of me. I know what it is, and I can tackle it better because I know it very specifically what it is, as opposed to just this thing off to the side.
Great futures risk managers or respect traders. There's a calm demeanor around them, right? They know where they are and they think clearly. So clarity helps a lot. Again, still working on it, and we talk about we have a whole list of things that are misnomers in the marketplace, right? Things that people say. You got to know your cost to be a good marketer. That's not true. The market does. I hate to say this. The market doesn't.
It's very callous to say, but
she
does not care.
Right?
You're evil. She's mean and heartless.
Right. And you go over. You're competing with an Argentine farmer and a Brazilian farmer and a Canadian wheat farmer. You got all this competition. It's a very important thing to be a great farm manager, to know your cost and structure, but it doesn't necessarily implement what you're going to do in your risk management in a commodity market. So when you kind of start to make those plays, you can start to say, well, I'm going to defend, I'm not at profitable. I'm going to talk about my own farm. We ran through them the other night. We're pretty decent managers. We're probably not profitable on a total cost basis. Everything in. We are positive still on cash flow, so maybe we're going to have to defend positive cash flow, right? And so these are again these intersections between merchandising and being a good farm manager. And that's why we end up talking about some farm management topics as these intersections go. One of the things about the class, when you really make that jump to a risk manager, is you will shed a lot of things. You will not listen to a market report anymore.
Or at least not to the same degree you did before.
Right. You might just see what the price is, but you're not going to sit there and try to figure out what's this bullshit.
But the next Chinese tender is going to be yours.
Right. The next USDA report and all these type of things, and you can free yourself up to work on all these little bullets. Right. If you're gonna produce, if you're farming, I don't know, Midwest, and you're going to farm, I don't know, 1,000 acres, and you're going to deliver, I don't know, 150,000 bushels of grain. Right. Every penny is worth $1,500. Every little penny, right? And you just need to stack those pennies up, right? And if it's 10 cents, it's 15,000, and you can go down, or you can do it on a per acre basis. It's a 250 bushel corn country here, right? It's $2.50 an acre, and you farm 1,000 acres of corn.
Yeah.
Right, and that's how it's just like great agronomy, right? That's how you win. You win by stacking dimes, and it's things you can learn.
Yeah, and that's the other thing in terms of taking the stress out of at least certain decisions is once you are versed in merchandising skills, there are just kind of 10-ish commandments that you just do. When the basis is in an inverse, you get off basis. Period. We don't have to think about it anymore. You maybe take a clever approach over the next 48 hours to get that best basis and negotiate that best basis, but you aren't on basis anymore, and things like that just will take significant step changes and of stress off your psyche just by knowing this is what we do, and there's tried and true 100-year practice reasons for us doing that.
So the answer, is when you're getting into this low price environment, or when you're marketing grain below total cost of production, you can't quit. You got to keep after it. And now there are some things we look at, and we get more advanced. We teach 4 nights on options for farmers. We strip away all the Greeks, and people like to teach it like
a couple of Greeks, but just
right.
So that it's clear in our mind what's what.
Right. We don't sit there and try to
no complex math. No.
Yeah. No square roots in the calculator kind of thing, or sine, cosine. And we teach options 4 nights, so that's 8 hours, right? And we start at the basics, and then we end up with breaking down what are these really complicated things that people are selling out there in the marketplace, and what do they really do for me, and this, and when are they applicable. And so we do some of that. Can also help in these type of situations, but it takes time. And then you don't get it all in the class. You got to go out and practice. And I think we steal a little bit from the agronomy side. If you're going to test a new hybrid, do it or a new chem program. You do it on an appropriate size. But the key is to learn. So all winter long, or with our clients, we're like, just go out and do a truck. You can do a lot of this stuff on one truck.
Do a 5,000 bushel contract of whatever.
But the key isn't about how it turns out. The key is what you learn. Because that's the thing that's going to provide you. So which tool, once your box is full, option's just one of many tools in the box, which one to pull out in which situation.
Yeah. That's a lot.
I'm glad that you took that route for your answer. I mean, we knew there was going to be value in your class last year that we talked, but now I think it's even more applicable. And I hate to say that because it was applicable then. If
It's always applicable.
Right? If I would have sold for more, I would be excess cash flow, have upgrades, the ability to do a vacation, whatever it is. Everybody's got their ifs. And the point is, it's not easy to have discipline. One of the first things you said was you got to be disciplined. What do you do when you're in a market like this where you got to be disciplined, you got to stick to your plan? I bet more than half of our listeners don't have a plan. And it's hard to be disciplined when you didn't have a plan to come in with. It was, I wanted to sell at, $4.75, and they didn't. Well, plan B was I put in targets at $4.75 in case it goes back up. And then it didn't. So the plan is, I don't have a plan. Would you say that's fairly accurate?
Is now what?
Right. Well, yeah, the plan is the head in the sand.
Yeah. and there's no reason you can't pick it up today. Right, there's just a set of things you can start.
Yep.
You can start heading down that road, and you're right. It's easy to, when margins are relatively good, right? To ignore this piece of the puzzle, and quite frankly, because futures are random, you're fine over long periods of time, assuming you can withstand it. The cash side is just money in my mind that is slipping to the wrong side of the ledger.
Yeah.
So when I think about the ledger, there's the farmer right here who's taking all this crop risk, right? In theory, whoever takes the most risk should get paid. And that should be how it works. But unfortunately, what we're seeing is we got slippage. And that slippage is either slipping into the marketplace or it's slipping into the commercial side. And there's a very clear path to stop that slippage. It's just to get educated. And
level the playing field by at least going with most of the basics that your buyers go with.
Right, level that playing field and stop that slippage, because we're going to need that, right? If margins are going to get a lot tighter, right, 10 cents or 20 cents a bushel, right? So it's 20 cents on 200 is $50 an acre, right? $50 an acre is going to matter. And looking at the current economics, when we were working on $200, $300 margins an acre, didn't matter as much.
Yeah, when it's $7 a bushel corn, people probably wouldn't sweat the fact that they missed 15 cents on the inverse on basis. But now they do anything for that 15 cents. Yeah.
So that's what the typical, like, you guys are squeezing every ounce out of this unit as possible.
And we are capturing it by following the game plan.
Yeah. Maximizing the value of what you should be getting. You're capturing it.
Independent of market structure, independent of flat price.
And we're talking like pennies per bushel, 5 cents, 10 cents, 15.
And you just keep adding them up.
Yeah.
I set out.
Trade by trade by trade.
So I'm a relatively small farmer. We farm, roughly 1,000 acres total. And I sat one night in the tailgate with the largest farmer in our area, and we're friends, right? And we go through the cost structure, and his land rent's slightly higher. He buys his chem cheaper. He uses his size and leverage. My land rent's a little bit lower because I don't have to. My yield's actually a little higher. Just kind of go down through it, and he goes, "Well, yeah, but you sell your futures higher." I said, "That's not the case. If I could do that, guaranteed, right? Mike and I we're headed to the Caymans, man.
We'll do the show from the beach.
We'll call it, right?
Or on our yacht.
And we're humble enough to know, because I've seen it, right? Because even with all those resources behind me as a head trader, it got super hard. It is super hard, even for the commercials today, to spec and make money. Information cost is plummeted, right? Speed is increased. Outside users from fundamentals.
Participants have
Participants are in what they are using the market for are different. So I know I don't have an advantage, even though I spent a career doing it. Now, I did say year in, year out, mine is probably 30 cents a bushel. But it's not on the future side. A little bit, right? But it's on all these little details that add up, stacking dimes, right? That make it work. Well, that's meaningful eventually, and especially because it's, like Mike said, it repeats itself year after year after year. It's as a small farmer, my little piece of advantage, because a lot of days I feel like I'm getting run over, right?
Yeah. And by the way, what you described too in terms of a higher price environment and maybe people getting away from the details, there's a little bit of a myth out there that the buy side makes more money in low price environments. Quite frankly, I think they make more money in high price environments, because remember, these guys are primarily incentivized on basis. And when that flat price market is rocking, they can play with basis way easier than when it's bouncing off the bottom at $4. Way more. So, and I think people just their eyes aren't on the ball as much, because it's like, we're doing great. $7.
If you slip $50,
$6 corn, so what? $7 corn, hey. So, yeah.
Terraplex Ag is your one-stop shop for agricultural drones. Visit www.terraplexag.com to explore their range of drones, support equipment, and technology that provides you the accuracy and efficiency you need. Their experts have training and support services to help you use your equipment safely and effectively. Or you could have them custom apply your chemicals themselves. Unlock the agility that you need to accelerate profitability on your farm with Terraplex Ag, delivering cutting-edge solutions for yield-maximizing results. Visit www.terraplexag.com.
Man.
We can convince you to show up for class now, Corey.
I need to. I'm a terrible student.
Well, I want to know, as you said, you got to know some of your A students. I want to know what some of the common takeaways were. What did they find to be the most valuable out of your class last year?
I think knowing the position, right, and we give them the tool, and then they put their own stuff in it, right? Because you're still marketing. By the time the class, you're still got grain to market, right? So they really got up on that and how everything works.
Separating basis from futures
from
forevermore.
Forevermore.
In your mind and in your discussions with your buyers.
A nugget for the listeners here today, right? In the hedged stuff. So we're not talking about dry beans or alfalfa or something, although they're related. Your conversation just needs to be about basis. Everybody has the same CBOT. So when you go and ask for a bid from your grain buyer, they need to just tell you what the basis is.
Yeah, do not say, what are you paying for corn today?
Right.
Say, what is your basis?
That small little subtle change, because we teach.
And you got to know what month they're bidding off of.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, sometimes, especially this time of year when it can go right to new crop.
Right.
But it can skip over September.
That little tidbit, right? It changes how the buyer on the other side, because we train buyers, we were those buyers, right? They now know you're relatively sophisticated because you're not just I'm selling flat price corn, and that changes how they bid you.
And you will be treated differently.
It'll start to change that dynamic. We love it when they say, we have a young lady in the class. She's like, they treated me different. I now have confidence because I know how they think, how they buy, what the local person is incented on. You might be surprised. We go through all that in the class, and that's probably the best little piece of that is what are one of those things that now they have confidence when they go out there. They know what the market, when they know what the calculations are, they know how to go and offer. We teach a section on negotiations. There's a theory around how to negotiate, right?
Like the psychology of it.
When you're a merchant, you go to negotiations class.
Yeah.
But when you're a farm, nobody offered you that opportunity to understand how that looks. And what does that buyer value? Because mutual value is the best way to do this, right? How am I increasing value for the ethanol plant, the poultry feeder, and how do we share in that? So we teach a lot on these it's all gory detail.
Yeah. But I think going back to the A students, I think the trying new things in small, reasonable amounts and really learning from that and building upon it. We had a lot of good examples of that. We teach a concept on not all bids are created equal. So if one basis but if the two bases are the same, well, there are all kinds of other economic things that could differentiate each destination. How quickly do they pay you? How quickly do the trucks turn? Do you get squirrely grades every once in a while? And they're not that flexible. All these little things to sort of have in front of you, trade by trade, to understand the true relative value between each destination and how to document that and measure it. I think another thing that really on the advanced side that when we talk about maybe not getting too taken up day to day by trying to listen to the latest greatest market commentary, but obviously pay attention to flat price, but basis is telling you things. The inverted or carry charge market is telling you something. We get into options and looking at the value of options and or sort of the embedded probability of price that option market is telling you at any one time. And then the future spreads, between each subsequent month is also telling you things. So don't just look at flat price. Look at flat price, but look at basis. Look at the options market. Look at the spreads. That's all telling you a body of work that's much richer than just turning on your DTN and going, oh, corn's up 5 today.
Right.
There's way more that synthesizes into that than just that number.
So it sounds complicated, but
it really isn't.
It really isn't. And we just teach people that the market's smarter than me. Thank God we have it. Okay.
Right.
If you didn't have a CME, and Mike and I, we made most of our money in stuff that was not traded on a CME type market around the world. You put the kind of resources we had behind us and the training and the financial wherewithal into the hands of a Mike and I, we're going to run roughshod over that market.
I think you mentioned this in the last podcast, the famous quote from Dwayne Andrews, the
go
founder
ahead.
of ADM.
Right, go ahead and get rid of the CME. We're gonna know more about what that corn is
truly worth than
you'll ever know. Yeah, the transparency that is provided in the U.S. market is an absolute blessing. I know it doesn't feel like that.
It doesn't feel like it right now.
USDA reports, but turn Mike and I loose in a sunflower market in Ukraine or a fish oil market that is in thousands of little places scattered all over the world where they're squeezing, fish guts.
And you happen to be the largest buyer on earth.
And you're on the largest buyer on earth, right?
I think, again, to quote you make your own rain.
Yeah, you change. First you go buy it up, and then you change the formulation.
Yeah.
We did an interview about a month ago with folks that are growing seeds for prairie, and it's the same way. They control their own market. It's purely based off of supply and demand, and if someone's got the demand for it,
The purple spiderwort
Yeah.
seeds for $700 a pound or whatever.
Rabbits. I tried that. Rabbits. That's rabbit food.
So
I'll shoot the rabbits for $700 a pound.
I've got an air rifle with a suppressor, a 22 caliber, and I live right in the middle of the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro. And none of my neighbors know that I'm the Rambo for rabbits.
I like that a lot. I want to go back. Go ahead.
They ain't touching my vegetables. So, sorry.
That's good. We go back to, again, one of the takeaways that you reiterated is they know their position, and you give them a formula or a template that they can use to establish what their position is. I want to know, with your philosophies, does that position change after every sale, or are you still trying to focus on a break even? Your position is, I have this many bushels, this many contracts that I have to sell in order to hit my projected crop this year. It changes after harvest when you know what your actual yield is. How often are you updating your position?
yeah, so we start with yield. That's your long, right? And before you start, you have an idea, and not your APH, but what you really think you're going to produce by what you're investing and where you're growing at which farm, right? We do it by farm. The smaller, I had a customer say, "Can we just do it by county?" It was a big farm. I said, "That's a little too big." Okay, no, but have them do it by farm, and then you build up that position. That's your length, right? And then
For all the time, you keep trucking, but for all the times to be conservative in your operation, do not be conservative with your yields as it pertains to your position. That will bite you.
put it in as best you know.
You'll be wrong, plus or minus, but don't be conservative.
There's as much damage done by being too conservative on your yield estimates as there is the other way.
95% of our customers last year were conservative on their yields.
But why? Because if I have more bushels, so what? I got more money.
I'm just talking from a risk management because
Okay.
you don't understand that risk, right? It's not in your pool. Every time you make a basis sale, a future sale, that goes into the position. Anytime you do that goes into that position, and it's always spitting out your net, right? What is the risk? And it's you've got some stuff that offsets your long, your short. All this yip about USDA report. That's the problem with being a farmer. Everybody knows your position. They know you're long. It's a question of just how long, right? That's what all this is about. At least when I was a spec trader, I could hide things,
Yeah.
right? When you do intentionally, right? You
Yeah.
don't want the market to know what Inc.'s position is, right? You do all these things to make the thing opaque to the marketplace. So the answer is every time you make a sale, if you're a length, you're reducing some risk, right? And we keep an eye on that. We keep chipping away and become that risk manager to the farm, which allows you to work not only in the merchandising side, but work on things on the farm that are more value added.
Yeah. But again, to build on your question, how often to update your position? It just obviously, if you're very active on the sell side, it's easy to do it that way. But this time of year is the kind of thing where, let's say you've been dry for the last couple of weeks and then you get a big soaker. Well, then you need to really kind of think about what your yields are going to be, because again, if you're too conservative, the last thing you want to do is have too big of a harvest. You got to bring grain to town anyway, and now you're forced to, as opposed to being proactive beforehand. One of our mantras is you manage your space way before harvest, and a good merchandising plan starts dang near before you put it in the ground. You don't want to be scrambling with 20,000 bushels of corn, at gobjillions under the December, and for all we know, in some parts of the Northwest Corn Belt, there ain't even any room at the inn, and you got to wait. That's not good. So that's where being conservative can bite you.
Right. So it's a constant up. It's not say it's we don't update yields constantly. If something happens, hailstorm comes through. Okay, that farm gets changed.
Everybody knows their farm better than we do. So when that makes sense seasonally.
Right. You go through doing late season nitrogen application, you get an idea of what your field looks like.
Yeah.
And the only person you have to tell is yourself. You don't have to tell anybody else, what you think your real yield is. But it's super important, not only from a risk management side, but as Mike alluded to, there's an operational intersection. We say that, your space plan starts before you ever plant the crop, but there's this period now is a really hot time for, here's how much space I have, here's how much I think I'm going to have, here's how we're going to allocate the space out. Here's how much cash flow I'm going to need maybe potentially to generate. So these bushels have to come to town. Let's have a plan. and we teach a lot of stuff that is counterintuitive. You combat a space issue at the beginning of harvest, not the end, if you want to be pro. Okay, if you wait to the end, right, you fill up every bin and nook and cranny and whatever else comes to town. That's you and everybody else. So, and the buyer knows you're coming, right?
Yep.
So the bid gets lower. They go cash only, right? So you're selling a horrible basis, and you're going to get to wait in line, right, if they're even open.
Yeah.
So we always tell that when you get out ahead and you've got good, accurate position, that you run the intersection here, you run a little bit of cash flow, which in our tracker, we put that as a piece of the puzzle. Now, right, you tackle that issue up front, which seems a little counterintuitive because you want to make sure all your space is full.
Which, by the way, saves you tremendous amounts of operational time too.
Right. Yeah.
A good merchandising plan will save you a lot of operational headache.
Yeah, we can't sit in the line, right, with today's combines and carts.
Right.
You can't have enough trucks. I mean, it's just you've got to attack this stuff differently now.
It was eerie beginning of last fall, because we went to town, managed the bushels that had to go to town beforehand, and we're taking it right to the ethanol plant, and it was a drive-through.
Perfect. Early on.
Yeah.
And was the bid structure
And
inverted?
Bids were good.
Was there a spot premium over new crop still?
Yeah, it was anywhere from just at the board to 10 cents, 15 cents over.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Yeah, for your part of the world, that's a good bid.
That's a heck of a off the combine number.
But I felt like bases have actually held this summer has actually been kind of the shining point of the crappy markets too. We've been
in your area because you had a drought.
You had enough drought around here, or splotchy drought, to where, and a lot of demand in this state that somebody.
Everyone else has chalked it up to just no one's selling. It's still in the bin.
Mm-hmm.
But
not in your part of the world.
Right.
A lot of things that's happened too in this part of the world, and southern Minnesota too, that had some really droughty areas, is, the buyers were sort of reaching over and pulling out of an atypical draw area to run the thing, unbeknownst to the buyers that are here.
Yep.
We call that zone bidding. So if there's ever been a year where grain probably moved 50 more miles than it normally would, and this is one of them, so that your basis might be getting better, even if you had a decent crop around here, just because somebody else was pulling a little bit more in your draw than versus what they normally would.
Right. Well, I welcome the drought back.
After,
Probably a rainbow out there.
Yeah.
Well, as of September 20th or so, the drought can kick in.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I might need to start a little sooner than that with as
15th,
much the saturation that we've
yeah.
got going.
Yikes, that's a pretty scary thought to think if harvest goes smoothly as well. When you just look at market position and where things are going to go, if we don't come up with a bunch of demand and we have great supply and we have no issues getting supply out of the field.
Yeah, and in some parts of the world, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know. I wouldn't be able to, with a ton of confidence, say exactly where, but there's still a lot of old crop sitting around. And that stuff's going to come to town too, in certain parts of the country.
So
And,
you wind all this. We're starting to delve into the bull and bear discussion. The question then is, if I hear concern, right? So if you're concerned and you know you have bushels that have to come to town, start working on the problem.
And if you got old crop, focus on that first.
Yeah. There's some old. Obviously, somebody's carrying the 2 billion bushels on September. Somebody, and it's not in the commercial. It's not. Okay, I can tell you, other than their bear pipeline, they will not be carrying the grain because interest cost. If you think about, went from a 2% operating loan to a 10% operating loan. So in all my cost structures, that one's up 5-fold, and it has radically changed farming.
Especially soybeans.
Especially
Because that's your best bang for your buck to get that beaten down, your operating loans and stuff like that.
So just, again, we get to be a risk manager. We say, okay, I got these bushels that come down. I'm going to manage the risk. And it just, again, it brings peace of mind and it brings discipline. But that's a hard jump. We have yet to find a farm that we talk about this and get them to that mindset. It takes a while. But once you get there, life gets better.
So for our listeners that listened last year and didn't sign up for your class, what are you changing? What's going to be different this year to maybe incentivize them to do it?
Well, we'll be better teachers now that we've got a year under our belt, right?
That's what I was waiting for.
Or like the first 2 weeks.
You didn't want to be the guinea pig. You wanted him to be shined up, ready to go.
Or like the first 2 weeks, right? We get thrown into this big, beautiful, state-of-the-art classroom, and I'm like, well, now what? I mean, we got the camera to manage, we got the lighting to manage, we got the sound to manage, we got the either manual flips on the pages or through the remote, and then sometimes you got it on 2 different modes, and then we got the camera to zoom in while we whiteboard. So you're doing all this and trying like hell to passionately pass on this knowledge, all the while hoping that they can hear us or that kind. So that was. It sounds trivial, but man, the first couple of weeks, I was nervous.
Oh, we
so
understand
that
it.
got
We
better.
get it. We get it. We got to go to an event tomorrow, and it's not that I'm nervous, but I know something's not going to go right. It's just what.
I'd say from the class, right? We're first off, now that we've got the base curriculum, it's going to get deeper. We learn a little bit more about what resonates, right, and how to teach this item. We do a lot on the whiteboard from scratch because I think it's easier for people to follow. We just okay, we're going to draw this out. We do a lot of visual stuff, explain very basics. We also will go through every week we're watching. We had the base set, but we'll sit there. There's always something to learn from, right? We want to be an active learning. So if the market's doing this, we may adjust the class to go, okay, or the market did this week and we're going to skip back. Remember we talked about this 2 weeks ago. Here's it in practice. So we're always going to be adjusting that class to give us kind of that real-time look to it. Because there's always something. We had lots of interesting things happen last winter.
Yeah, that we stopped, dropped everything, and changed the class structure for that day. You may recall when I don't remember who bought it, but bought a couple of Brazilian soybean cargoes on the East U.S. I want to say that was January sometime, Jeff. And yeah, the markets just got the absolute crap slapped out of them, and the spreads went wild. And it's like this is a perfect teaching moment to see what that means for spreads. That in that specific instance, and it was like the week after something happened with some China tenders too, that then had the river basis go through the roof. So we spent hours and hours and hours and hours writing 40 hours of curriculum, but we're continuous improvement guys, and there were times when we sent it off as is, but there were times when Jeff and I beat ourselves up for 4 hours to perfect that next 2 hours.
We'll probably we'll add some stuff in there.
We'll add some stuff.
We're gonna add a one night in options because we just simply ran out of time.
Yeah,
and we kind of understand at that point what the pace is, right? So the next, like I said, you don't want to be the first person, right? You want to be it's kind of like buying a slightly used combine, right? They get all the bugs out of it.
Yeah, so Corey said that's why he didn't go last year. He's going to be in the second time.
Your first is your worst.
The class is going to be a ton of fun.
No, I will toot our horns a little bit when we were at Hefty. I mean, we already had like our alumni group, come right to our booth that morning and shoot the breeze, and we actually have a couple repeat folks that went through the class and like, you know what, I learned, but I want to do it again. I like the camaraderie. I like I like the farm management discussions, and there's some things I'm sure I'll still pick up by doing this again with you guys. So we have actually even some folks will take the class all over again. Same guy, same camera, same couch next winter. So
I feel like there would still be value in something like this, especially for someone like me that you might feel like you're over your head the first time you get into it. And then you get through it, picked up a lot of great things. But it's like when you rewatch a movie over and over again and you see something else that you missed the first time, I'm sure there's some value. So if you've got the time to dedicate to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can go back and watch it, right? We have a channel out on Acres, and then the students have a private access Acres channel that just is the class recordings.
We keep the recordings for a month after the class is over. We actually, to some of the quiet ones that Jeff alluded to already, it's like, is everything cool? And then, we were all getting good feedback, but like we basically had our list of like the 30-ish% of the students that were kind of quiet or not that present, where we made dang sure we sat on them that month after the class was over and all the recordings were still there to say, is there anything that's not clear in your mind? And kind of cleaned all that up that way too.
And I think it's good we'd like to get more people obviously we talk targeting of the farm. But boy, we'd like to see more bankers in there.
We got some bankers coming this year. We had some land management types from some of the who's who of the land management groups that were in the class. Now they may farm too.
To come in after 5.
Ouch.
They don't have to leave their couch. They don't even have to leave their couch. But it's a better discussion, particularly when you're starting about operating loans. If I'm a banker and we're maybe burning through some working capital here, I want to know that whoever I'm loaning this money has a understanding of risk management. And we've been talking to some of the bigger banks here, and we're working on that traction as to how do we, it's going to stabilize cash flow in a better way, and that's important in the banking side, especially as margins get tighter. So we'd love to have some more participants in the class. It also makes the class richer. It's a different perspective. Seed company people that are talking to farmers a lot. We've been looking at we look at contracts on behalf of either our retained clients. We'll go with specialty contracts. When you dig in the details, what's that really? And then you relate it. Am I really making that premium, or there's things that we need to negotiate, right? Because this actually turns out to be important. If you're participating in a seed contract and it's buyer's call 6 months later, well, it's costing 10, 12 cents a bushel to carry soybeans today.
Yeah.
Right? Who's paying the bill, right? And so getting into those details, but I think it also on the flip side is how do they craft a contract that's better? Because there's a lot of specialty stuff out there today. So how do we attract that grower that's willing to grow specialty with a contract that really is mutually beneficial? So yeah, the class, we like that broad spectrum coming across the class, and you can listen to one person and the next person, right? Technology is wonderful for that.
Yep. Yeah, the seed really hits home because that's on the bean side of things. We grow some seed beans, and they pull off the basis from Iowa Falls, and our market's ADM in Des Moines, and we get a better basis normally there than and it's like, and then yes, the carry thing, they take it when they want, not when we can.
You're financing their business, right?
Yeah.
And so getting into that's a huge, right? Every month that went by.
Yeah. Which is crazy. On the other end, they want paid right away for the seed.
Yeah,
so.
surprise.
So
Yeah, one of our bigger victories last year was a specialty bean discussion that we assisted one of our customers through to think a little differently and just put your negotiating hat on and ask. And it ended up being not only a fantastic merchandising decision, but it helped them operationally as well in terms of freeing up some bin space and things like that.
Nice. Well, if you guys should have just told everyone to sell right away at harvest or right after harvest, separate the CBOT and the basis, and then everyone would be good, right?
Yeah, we'd just be that smart. It's
no
just that
interest.
Yeah, class was actually 2 weeks and 4 hours.
Yeah.
So we're done. That's all you gotta do. Next.
Yeah.
No, but I appreciate you coming back. I appreciate you diving in, and clearly your folks found value in it because you're going to do it again, which is a lot of good news for our listeners. But the payoff question that you guys get to wrap up today's episode is, when you look at work-life balance, and we hate the word balance as we put this question together, we want to know, how effectively have you juggled work and personal life?
I'll start.
You can go ahead and start.
You might need a little more time to think because you got farming. I've done I think a really, really good job, and I also credit my wife in sort of being division of labor. I would say we sort of seamlessly divide labor in our household. Sometimes a little too much. Like I just came off of 2 full months of traveling softball with 2 of my daughters, so I am the free Uber for literally thousands of miles. So taking them to Peoria and back. I was just in Des Moines and back and things like that. We divide the labor. My wife's got a great gig that keeps her home. I've found myself traveling at times, so that's been a nice. She's around when I'm not. I don't know. I've sort of also managed my life. I'm a bit of a minimalist, and I try to focus. I guess I try to focus on the really important things in life, and just haven't had like crap cloud my brain or my time. So I just have put myself in a position where I'm just perhaps a smidgen more independent than the average schmuck. That's part of the reason why I left Cargill when I did. Nothing against Cargill necessarily at the time, but I wanted to pursue other things and didn't want to be beholden to the large corporate world and that kind of thing. So I think I've done a decent enough job.
Coming from the guy in the Bitcoin shirt.
I know.
I mean, how many Bitcoins do you have to have a Bitcoin shirt?
Well, they only ship them to you after you.
As many that's on the shirt.
If I told you, you might think differently. But no, that's another episode. If you all want to talk about it,
I could talk to do that sometime.
I could talk to you guys all day about it.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that same question. I don't do a good job. I mean, let's face it. I'm we're
But can I say something on a credit to him? He is one of the most focused individuals in the moment of anybody I've ever worked with. So I think he gets so focused sometimes in the moment. I think he forgets like the over here part.
yeah. No, I have a great wife. We have 3 kids, and they're growing up fast, right? You see them; they're off to college. One's
Yeah, my oldest just got her first job out of college. So yeah,
so I got 2
milestone.
2 in college, and as they leave, you go, God, did I spend enough time with them today? But when you see a lot of I'm a first gen farmer. Okay, I love farming from West, but I didn't grow up on a real farm. I worked on a real farm, and then I got an ag degree, and I worked on farms. And then in '08, we said we're going to try it, and bought a planter, rented a tractor, and planted 200 acres, and that's how I got started. I got a great supporting spouse. She's just a tireless farm girl worker, just a tremendous mother, but it's sacrifice. I think, as you have first gens on, we could do an episode around first gens. That first gen is going to have to sacrifice. Every dollar is going to have to pour back into that farm. It's really the second gen and the third gen that start to, if you want to start farming, you can do it, but you got to realize what kind of sacrifice is. And as I, look back, I guarantee I didn't spend enough time with these kids as they're growing up, right? And probably didn't spend enough time with the spouse. And that's just being bluntly honest. It takes sacrifice to be a farmer, period.
Yeah. And certainly I went through some of those too. But you had built an entire farm from scratch while having, a top 10-ish risk position in Cargill. That's a lot of work and a lot of commitment. So,
But you don't know what you don't know either. If you would have spent more time, maybe we would have got tired of you.
I was just going to ask.
yeah, maybe being a part's a good thing sometimes.
The number of people that we've talked to, Corey, have you ever come across somebody that said, I spent too much time with my kids when they were growing up?
No.
And it's not a knock on the fact that we feel like we didn't spend enough time. I don't think there's somebody that is ever going to answer this question by saying, oh, I don't work enough. And that's fine. That's why I hate the word balance, because it's not a 50-50. It's what works for you.
Yeah,
we're just trying to get enough of a head of all these interviews that we do, different perspectives on how it's handled.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I saw some floating around the Twitter sphere the other day. It said, if you're just going to work 40 hours a week, it's hard to get ahead in today's America. You've got to have a second gig. You got to get
That's
out.
part
to
of
that,
this discussion.
You got to get kind of that 60
paper currency, fiat currency.
Oh God, here we go, big. So yeah, I mean,
it's a fact. We're on a hamster wheel.
It's a lot of work, right, to get ahead in today's environment. And farming, has it's been in an up cycle. Maybe you're not going to go through a down cycle. I don't know.
We're in a down cycle, right? We've lost half of what we had.
Do the math. Do a 20-something year consumer price index and discount $4 corn. In the late 90s or whatever, we had a 2 in front of corn. Well, we have our $2 corn right now.
If you start running that on inflation.
Just inflation adjusted, correct.
Yeah.
It doesn't adjust for other things like all the other
Productivity
gains we've made. So yeah, but if you just take absolute value to absolute value, we are at $2 corn right now, adjusted for inflation.
So it's a sacrifice. I know I know you've done some stuff with other people. I know first gen farms and stuff like that, and I'd love to sit there, but you got to be ready, and you got to have a spouse that's on board too. It's tough, right?
Yeah.
So it's tough on the. When you get everybody on board, though, and farming's a great career. I encourage people to go out and do it. Just know what you're getting into, because it's been great for me. It's really made me, and it's been great for my kids, right? And to show them what we call a healthy adult example, I hope. And farming's a great space and a great. Come on in, but just know what you're getting into, and knowing, especially if you're that first gen or you're starting out cold, that you're gonna have to farm the piece of ground that nobody else wanted to farm, and maybe work in a hog building that nobody else wanted to do, and.
Yeah, I do that.
Yeah, and pour that money back into it. But what a great lifestyle and a great place to raise a family for sure.
Yeah.
Can I hit you guys with a trivial question?
Do it.
Fire away.
Because I like that style last time when you kind of hit us with one, and we assumed another one was coming. This came to me knowing we were going to be here, and I was at Fong's Pizza, downtown Des Moines.
Did you get the crab rangoon pizza?
As part of many, the banh mi was the best in our group's opinion, not just mine. But man, that was good food.
Yep.
And I was looking around and I heard somebody talking about something. So this is a hint to the answer. But what is the most arguably there's not data around this, but most globally recognized export from Iowa that somebody somewhere in the world would know who they are, or who it is, or what it is.
Oh, it's a they? Or
Maybe. It's not corn, it's not soybeans, it's not hogs. that somewhere in the world, if somebody saw that,
Can we get question? Can we ask questions? Is this a game?
what's the
Tanner likes
most
games.
globally recognized export from the state of
So
Iowa?
it's not a commodity.
No.
You
Is
gotta
it John Wayne?
You know, that was going to be something that I think falls in line as a very, very good answer, and I would say that's probably tied for first, especially if you went back.
Sure.
But just think more modern and
See, I was trying to think of like great athletes and movie stars and what.
You're getting
what
close.
is-
You're getting
what
close.
is something that the whole world's going to consume? Because if I took an ear of
No,
sweet
no, it's
corn-
not the whole world, but just enough around the world that you could be in Santiago, Chile, you could be in London, you could be in Tokyo, and somebody would know exactly what that is.
John Deere,
But that's technically Illinois, right?
Waterloo, Des Moines,
Eh.
Moline. Yes.
Yeah. That's good. But yeah. Slipknot.
Really?
Ah,
Oh yeah.
Really?
I cannot name one Slipknot song. I'm sorry. So
You can be in.
you're not a maggot.
They have a big European following.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking about that.
Corey Taylor.
Corey Taylor.
Yeah.
They were bringing that up, and I'm like, I'm gonna. Again, there is no like scientific data to what I just said, but I'd be willing to bet somewhere around the world, if you went to any major metropolitan area on Earth, and you'd find somebody very quickly who knows.
I could take you to his house in Johnston. You would never know he lived there.
No, that's usually the case.
He used
For the
to-
good ones.
My mom was a Johnston post office worker and come in and get their mail. Just normal people. And then they put their masks on and it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a Corey Taylor get up for Halloween this year. Scared the living crap out of a lot of kids.
Oh, that's pretty good. Well, gentlemen,
Yeah,
this
all right.
is, again,
That's
a
a good
pleasure
one.
for you being here and teasing our audience with that question there at the end, because
Yeah.
now I know that our Nebraska friends are going to try and come up with what's widely known from Nebraska. It's probably nothing, but
It might be a
They
little
try to tell you it was corn, but it's not.
Yeah.
we love our listeners in Nebraska and our friends. But we want to send everybody to AgrisAcademy.com.
Yep.
If they're interested, or they can reach out to us. We can get them in contact with you guys.
And everything's on our homepage.
And when's
you
class start?
It'll start the week after Thanksgiving.
It's a wintertime class, and so we do the class. We still take a few retained customers every year if they have interest in that. And we're always looking we learn a lot from. That's why we do it, because we learn a lot. We're still out there taking notes. We put on those 2-day, 1-day workshops, right? You get somebody sponsors and it works like that, and that is our product, right? Yeah, and you catch us on AgrisAcademy.com. I put up videos. Mike and I will put up videos. Try to be once a week out on Acres TV, free, right? Just little 3-minute things that not bull and bear stuff, but just here's what you should be. Here's what the market is, and this is a learning opportunity. So yeah, we're having a ton of fun doing this. That really brings us down here today.
Yeah.
I hope that conveys through the whole podcast.
Yeah.
Thanks again for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Listeners, we thank you for listening. You know exactly what you need to do next, especially if you're not confident and understand what your position is, or if you don't have a plan. Do something to get started. Don't just put your head in the sand. All right. Thanks so much.